Welcome to the History Stories podcast. We've got some fascinating history books and uncovered sources to guide us today. We're taking a truly historic road trip into, well, one of the most outlandish deception operations ever, Operation Mincemeat.
It really is an incredible story. Looking through these sources you shared, it just sounds like something out of a spy novel, doesn't it?
Absolutely. But it's completely true. We're talking World War II, espionage, a dead body, forged documents, all aimed at fooling Hitler himself.
Sheer audacity is just, wow.
Yeah.
And the level of detail involved in pulling it off, it's quite something.
Okay, so let's set the scene. It's April 1943. According to these sources, a Spanish fisherman just doing his job off the Atlantic coast.
Near Huelva, yeah.
Exactly. And he finds a body. Not just anybody, British Royal Marine officer.
Yeah.
Looks like a plane crash victim.
Identified as Major William Martin.
Right, Major William Martin. And here's the kicker. He's got a briefcase chained to his wrist.
Chained. That detail alone is significant, isn't it?
Totally. And inside, supposedly top-secret Allied invasion plans. But they're pointing towards Greece and Sardinia.
Which immediately makes you think, well, how on earth did that happen? Such sensitive documents just washing ashore.
Precisely the question the British wanted people to ask, especially German intelligence in Spain.
Because, as the sources reveal, Major William Martin, well, he didn't exist.
Nope, a complete fabrication. The body was actually a Welshman, Glyndwr Michael, a man who died tragically in London.
And those letters, they're brilliant forgeries, meticulously crafted by British intelligence.
Cooked up is maybe the right word. The whole scenario body, fake ID, documents, it was all a deliberate setup.
A massive gamble, really, aimed right at the German high command.
The goal, plain and simple from these sources, convince the Axis forces that the Allies were hitting Greece and Sardinia next.
Thereby diverting troops, tanks, planes, everything away from the real target.
Which was Sicily.
Exactly, Sicily. It was audacious, maybe even a bit morbidly creative when you think about using a real body.
And that connection you flagged in the sources to Ian Fleming is fascinating, too. He apparently had a similar idea earlier on.
Yeah, the Trout Memo, I think it was called, shows these kinds of elaborate deception ideas were floating around.
So let's zoom out a bit. Strategic context. It's 1943. The Allies, based on the history books, had just pushed the Axis out of North Africa.
Right. So, looking at the map, Sicily is the obvious next move. The stepping stone into Italy, into Fortress Europe.
But the Allies knew the Germans and Italians weren't stupid. They'd expect an attack on Sicily and fortify it heavily.
Which would mean a bloodbath for the invading forces. So how do you achieve surprise when the target is so obvious?
Deception. Enter Operation Barclay. That was the bigger umbrella plan for fooling the Axis about the Mediterranean invasion.
And mincemeat was sort of the crown jewel of Barclay, or maybe the most bizarre part anyway.
Definitely the most bizarre. And using Spain. Why Spain specifically?
Well, as the sources point out, Spain was officially neutral, but it was absolutely teeming with spies. German agents, Allied agents, everyone.
A real hotbed of espionage.
Precisely. The British knew that if the Spanish authorities found this body and these documents, the details would almost certainly leak or be passed directly to the German intelligence network there. They were counting on that connection.
It was like playing chess, using the enemy's own intelligence gathering against them.
Absolutely. Planting the information where it was guaranteed to be found and transmitted up the chain.
And did it work? Did the Germans buy it?
Spectacularly well, according to these accounts. The documents made their way up the chain all the way to Berlin.
To Hitler himself?
Yes. The sources suggest Hitler was personally convinced. He apparently overruled some of his own commanders who maybe had doubts.
Wow. So he ordered reinforcements to Greece and Sardinia.
He did. Troops, panzer divisions, aircraft. Significant resources were shifted away from Sicily.
Even though Sicily seemed like the logical target.
Well, that's another clever part mentioned in the materials. The fake letters apparently included a kind of double bluff, acknowledging Sicily's importance, but framing it as a feint to distract from the real invasion in Greece.
That just adds another layer of genius to it, making the deception even more believable.
It really does. It played on existing German assumptions, but twisted them.
So the payoff. July 10th, 1943, Operation Husky, the Allied invasion of Sicily, begins.
And because so many Axis defenders had been moved, the landings faced far less resistance than anticipated.
That's huge. These history books credit mincemeat with saving potentially thousands of Allied lives.
Definitely. and significantly speeding up the success of the whole Sicilian campaign. It shows how effective intelligence and disinformation can be.
A well-played deception changing the battlefield reality.
Without a doubt. It's a stark reminder of that aspect of warfare.
But, okay, digging into the nuances here.
Yeah.
It wasn't quite that simple, was it? Did every single German intelligence officer fall for it, hook, line, and sinker?
That's a good point, and the sources do suggest some skepticism lingered, particularly among the Abwehr officers in Spain. They had some suspicions.
But it didn't matter in the end.
Well, the crucial thing was that the belief reached the top. It convinced Hitler and the OKW, the German High Command. They were the ones making the strategic decisions, shifting the divisions. So even if some lower-level guys had doubts, the deception worked where it counted most.
Okay, that makes sense. And historians, as mentioned in your source analysis, still kind of debate the exact weight of Mincemeat's contribution.
Yes. How much was Mincemeat versus other parts of Operation Barclay, or versus just general Axis strategic errors? It's hard to isolate it perfectly.
It was part of a bigger picture.
Exactly. A very significant part, most agree, but still part of a complex web of factors that led to the relatively swift Allied success in Sicily. It certainly wasn't the only reason, but a major contributing one.
And then there's the ethical side. Using Glyndwr Michael's body. He was, as the sources note, a vulnerable person who died destitute.
That's a really difficult aspect of the story. His body was used without his consent or his family's. British intelligence specifically looked for someone with no known relatives to avoid awkward questions later.
It's quite chilling when you think about it from that perspective. The human cost behind the strategic brilliance.
It is. It raises profound ethical questions about the means justifying the ends, even in wartime.
Despite those complexities, though, the legacy of Mincemeat is undeniable, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. It became legendary in intelligence circles, a classic case study in deception. You have to imagine it influenced how intelligence operations were planned for years afterwards.
Thinking outside the box, to say the least.
Definitely. Pushing the boundaries of what was considered possible in strategic deception.
And it's definitely captured the public imagination, the books, those films you mentioned.
Yes. Ewan Montague's original book, The Man Who Never Was, became a bestseller and a classic film. And then Ben McIntyre's more recent book led to another film adaptation and even a stage musical.
A musical. Wow. It just shows the enduring power of this almost unbelievable story.
It really does. And Glyndwr Michael, forever known as Major William Martin, buried with full military honors in Huelva. It's a powerful, silent monument to the whole affair. His true identity only came out decades later.
Let's dig into some of those finer details from the sources. Glyndwr Michael, a laborer, died from ingesting poison, possibly accidental, possibly not.
Yeah.
Tragically, that lack of connections made him ideal.
Yes. The anonymity was key for the planners. It's a sad footnote to his life, becoming this crucial yet unwitting participant.
And the main architects. Ewan Montague, you mentioned him, a brilliant Jewish barrister, an intelligence officer in the Naval Intelligence Division.
His legal mind must have been perfect for constructing such a complex, layered deception, thinking through all the angles, the potential pitfalls.
And his partner, Charles Cholmondeley, an RAF officer described as quite quirky in the sources.
Wait, it often takes that mix of personalities, doesn't it? The meticulous planner and perhaps someone more unconventional to make something like this work.
And we touched on Ian Fleming's Trout memo briefly, that earlier idea involving a corpse. It's like a prequel to Bond.
In a way, yes. Shows that kind of thinking was percolating.
But the detail that always gets me is the pocket litter, the personal effects planted on the body.
Oh, absolutely meticulous. As the sources described, they didn't just forge the official letters. They created a whole life.
Love letters. From a fictitious fiancée named Pam, who was actually an MI5 clerk, Jean Leslie.
Can you imagine writing those? And theater stubs, bills, an overdraft notice, I think. Even a receipt for an engagement ring.
All designed to make Major Martin seem utterly real. A believable person caught up in tragedy.
It's those human details that sell the lie, often more than the official documents themselves.
And the delivery method. The submarine HMS Seraph. Lieutenant Bill Jewell sending that coded signal. Mincemeat completed.
Again, sounds like fiction. The tension on that submarine must have been immense, delivering their package undetected.
And that final check planting an eyelash within the documents to see if the Germans actually opened them.
Incredible foresight. They needed confirmation that the bait had not only been taken, but examined. That little detail provided it.
Just amazing planning. So if people listening want to continue this historic road trip on their own.
Well, the sources you provided list some great options. The Imperial War Museums, the National WWII Museum in New Orleans often have exhibits or resources online.
Websites too, like traceofwar.com. Wikipedia obviously has summaries.
And for reading, Montague's own book, The Man Who Never Was, is the original account, though maybe slightly sanitized given when it was written.
Right, and Ben McIntyre's book, Operation Mincemeat, is generally seen as the definitive modern history, using declassified files.
Exactly. McIntyre really delves into the characters and the nitty-gritty details. Highly recommended based on the source reviews.
And we mentioned podcasts and documentaries too. Stuff you missed in history class, covered it. There are others, plenty to explore.
Lots of ways to dive deeper into this absolutely fascinating operation.
So wrapping up, Operation Mincemeat. It really is just a standout story from World War II. Ingenuity, deception, high stakes.
And that touch of the macabre we mentioned. It shows how creative, even bizarre thinking could genuinely alter the course of the war.
A seemingly impossible plan, pulled off with incredible attention to detail.
It really underscores the power of intelligence, and perhaps more interestingly, misintelligence in conflict.
Definitely. So as everyone reflects on this historic road trip we took, consider this. What other really outlandish, almost unbelievable schemes throughout history might have quietly shaped the world we know? Makes you wonder.
It certainly does. There are probably more mincemeats out there, maybe still waiting to be fully uncovered.
We definitely encourage everyone to check out those resources from our history books and uncovered sources and keep exploring this story. It's truly one for the ages.